I am studying France. Yes, I am trying to
Nice.
take the test.
And are you
Nice.
planning on studying abroad, Canada?
Yeah, but maybe
Nice.
5 years before.
5 years ago. Wow.
Yeah. It's a difficult process, but Canada seems very open. Out of all the countries, it seems to be one of the most open.
Do you think, I mean, should we start now or should we wait a little bit more?
I don't mind waiting. I don't mind
I
starting.
think we can start now.
Okay,
Oh, okay, perfect.
lovely. Right, and you're recording. Fantastic. Well, hi guys. I'm Tom.
And I'm Lauren.
It's lovely to be here with you today. We do lots and lots of IELTS training. We're very, very used to doing that sort of stuff. So, yeah. Hi, Sandra. Please turn your camera on if you would like to. We encourage open debate. It's an open forum. We want to create a safe space. If you have questions, you can ask us questions. However, if you don't want to open your camera, if you don't want to participate, that's also completely okay. There's no pressure. But yeah, we're here to help. So and we do like to encourage sort of a community sort of spirit, a community ethos. Okay. So what are we doing today, Lorena?
So we're talking today about the flashcard, which is in the speaking part of the test. But before, we wanted to talk to tell you a little bit about us. I know some of you have already joined these webinars before, but this is the first one of the year, so I think it's nice to tell you a little bit about us, no?
Yeah, so yeah, we have our own company, our own little institution. We focus heavily with language exams and training for language exams, IELTS, TOEFL, and now the Duolingo, which is also another popular one. We started at the beginning of the pandemic because I didn't have a job and Lorena didn't have a job, and she said teach English. So we started this venture and we've grown. So now we have, I don't know, 5 or 6 teachers helping us, about 70 students. We have community spaces. So yeah, we do lots of one-on-one classes, but also we do community-based things.
In case any of you is interested in our services, we train for the IELTS, for the TOEFL, and for the Duolingo in private sessions. So it's completely personalized. So so let's start then.
Yes, indeed.
So
Lorena's told me that we've got too many slides and there's too much content. So I apologize. So we'll try and get through it as quickly as possible. But basically, the speaking section is your chance to shine. It's your time to shine. You're free. Yeah, you can go in any direction you want. Obviously, following the flashcard, you know, the guidance of the flashcard, but really, you're just completely free. I like the IELTS much more than the TOEFL in this respect, because in the TOEFL, you've got 15 seconds to prepare, 45 seconds to speak about a topic. With the flashcard, it's much easier. You've got a minute to prepare and 2 minutes to talk about a topic. So you can expand and go into stories, you can add color, add lots of detail and examples to support your idea.
So let's see a little bit what is this part of the test. So the test has 2 sections. That has 3 sections. The speaking part has 3 sections. The first one is more of an interview about general topics. The third one is a new interview, but maybe about things that are a little bit more academic. But the second part, which is the flashcard, is your moment where it's the moment where you are going to speak on your own during those 2 minutes. So what can we, how does the flashcard looks like? So here we have 4 examples. We are gonna read a couple. But basically, what we have is a general topic. So, for example, in this first one, talk about a piece of clothing that you received as a gift recently. This is the general topic, and we will see it later as well. This is the focus of your answer. There are also other little questions related to a general topic, but those are questions for giving you some ideas, to give you some ideas. But in this case, this is going to be your focus. That's why it's a little bit bigger.
I mean, if you focus on the main question, you are probably organically, naturally going to touch on all of these other sub questions or criteria anyway. Yeah, so this exam is designed for people of different levels. Some students have a lower level, and they're only going to be able to flip the question. So talk about a piece of clothing you received as a gift. A piece of clothing that I received as a gift was, what was it? It was a jumper. When did you receive it? I received it for Christmas. Who gave it to you? My wife, Lorena, gave it to me. This is very rigid, very formulaic, okay? But if you just talk about the topic, you're probably going to mention all of these things anyway. Yeah, so don't fixate on this. Focus on the question. And, you know, yeah, we're going to go into that in a bit more detail later.
Yeah, so the topics vary. There are lots of different topics, fashion, sports, technology. So you need to be ready for every single topic. That doesn't mean that you need to study the topics, but that means that your level of English needs to be a certain standard that you can speak about comfortably about any of these.
Most of them are pretty straightforward. Yeah, most of these questions, a student who's been studying English, who's been studying the exam and the right approach should deal with pretty much all of these questions quite effortlessly. Occasionally, you get a really weird question and it might throw you. It's like, what? Why are they asking that? That's a weird question. You just have to do your best. Focus on finding a logical answer, something that you can expand on or expand upon. But generally, they're pretty straightforward and pretty simple.
Mm-hmm. All right. So how does it work? The first thing that you need to consider is that during the IELTS test, for those of you who don't know what's the dynamic and who haven't presented yet, it's a face-to-face conversation. So different to other exams where you're talking to a machine, you have the camera or you have the mic. In this case, there is a real person either in the same room or it can be in a video call online, but always will be in an institution. It's never at home. So that's the first thing. There is a person who is interacting.
I actually, personally, I prefer that. I think you can be more charming, you can create more of a rapport with your examiner, and who knows, that could be beneficial to you in the end. You know, that might be the difference between them giving you a certain mark or a lower mark, you know, creating that rapport. You're there, it's a real connection. I'd much prefer that than being online. You know, we've had cases where students are online and they've had technical difficulties and they've invalidated the entire exam. So I like the examiner part. So
the other thing is that you will receive like a flashcard. I think I don't have one here, but yeah, like a little flashcard. They will give you that upside down, and then they will tell you when you can.
I mean, this is a flashcard, but it won't look like that. It will look like the ones we had previously.
Yeah. So they will tell you when you can see the question, and from that point, the 1 minute preparation start to count. No? The examiner, it's very likely that is a British person. I've taken the exam many times, and I've always have had a British examiner. I have had it here in Colombia, and I've also done it in the UK. So I think that it's very likely that you have a British examiner. So you need to be a little bit comfortable, quite comfortable with the British accent. This is for the general test, not on the flashcard.
But yes, yeah. And in the exam itself, not the spoken section, but in the exam itself, they will use people speaking British English from any colony or anywhere in the world. So you do need to familiarize yourself with the British accent or British English in general.
So as we said previously, you will have 1 minute to prepare. That's the minute where you will take notes, where you will read the question carefully, take notes, and then you will need to speak for 1.5 minutes minimum, or 2 minutes. So something that is important is that you won't have the timer. You won't be able to see a timer. So either you will need to calculate how long is your response, or just keep speaking until the examiner just stops.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the examiner cutting you. They will cut you at various points in the speaking exam. If you're speaking too much, they'll just cut you. They might hint, like move on. If you don't, okay, next question. So here, if you breach the 2 minute mark, thank you very much. They'll just ask you to stop, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you've practiced and practiced and practiced and really feel you can manage your time management is very good, and you know, yeah, I'm definitely in the 45-second mark, I'm definitely around here, and it feels like you can just wrap up. And that's why I love Gabriel Garcia Marquez so much. You know, you can wrap up, you can close, sort of conclude your dialogue, and that would work. But if you're not sure, if your timing isn't great, just keep talking. Okay.
All right. So there are 4 criteria that the examiner is going to evaluate to calculate your score. So we're talking about fluency and coherence, pronunciation, lexical resources, and grammatical range and accuracy. So here we have proposed a checklist that you can use when you are studying to prepare yourself to answer these type of questions. So we're gonna read them just for time quite quickly, but if you have any questions, just let us know in the chat and we can go deeper in some of them. So fluency and coherence, we're talking here about 2 things. One, the pace of your speaking, and the second one is the structure that you are using. So first part, did I keep a good pace? I didn't speak too slow. I didn't speak too fast. Did I speak fluently without too much hesitations? Like just now, I have many fillers, for example, when I'm speaking.
I'm terrible. I'm constantly,
yeah.
You're better to just pause and not say anything. Or many students say like all the time. Many people say like. So those sorts of fillers.
It's not that you can't use it, but just try to be conscious of that and diminish the amount of fillers that you are using. It's normal in Spanish, in English, in any language. It's normal.
And it's very difficult to combat. But if you can, especially if you're training yourself and you're listening back to your recordings, you're listening back, looking for mistakes, looking for opportunities to improve. If you catch yourself doing that a lot, then try and limit that, reduce it in your next attempts. Okay.
So those are the parts related to fluency. About coherence and the structure. Did I answer the question in the terms it was asked? So many people start speaking and they didn't read very well the question, and this is very important because it's the task response. You need to respond exactly what they are asking. If you don't do that, that part of your score is going to be very low. Sometimes even they can think that that's more of a prepared question, a robotic question or a template or something like that, and that's something that we should avoid?
Yeah, for instance here, describe a piece of art you like. Well, a piece of art, that's a very broad subject. You know, it could be a sculpture, a painting, perhaps even music. But if you went on to describe something and you weren't really focusing on art, well, you're not really answering the question. So that does matter. If you go off on a tangent, you know, sometimes people see the question, they think of an idea, and they just run into it without planning properly. Maybe they've chosen a difficult subject, they've gone off on a tangent, they're going to get themselves in trouble.
Yeah, for example, here in describe a website that you have bought something from. If you only describe a website,
Google.
let's say Google, but you haven't bought anything via Google, or you are not talking about your experience buying something, that will be problematic. There are moments where maybe you don't understand the question, and in those cases, you need to try to make sense of it, try to talk about the general topic. But if this is in very extreme cases when you definitely don't understand what he's saying, but this is more about reading carefully what.
Unfortunately, the examiner will not be able to help you. In the other parts of the spoken section, you can ask them to repeat the question or rephrase the question, and they'll change the structure slightly. Here, you're on your own. We had a case with a very advanced student, but she panicked. She was having a really bad day, and she got neighbor and neighborhood mistaken. Okay, and she was supposed to talk about her neighbors, but she ended up talking about her neighborhood. She still did really well. Yeah, she misinterpreted the question, but she went on, gave a very coherent response. She's got a great level of English, so she still got a good score. Obviously, it impacted the score she got, but in that circumstance, you just have to do your best. If you don't understand it, just take a punt, just have a go, do your best, formulate a plan, stick to your plan, and hopefully you can expand with examples and just exhibit your fantastic English.
So similar to the essay part, the writing part, do I have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion? Maybe a conclusion that you can omit it if you are still speaking about the topic and you haven't gone to other places. But it's important that you give the introduction to the topic, that during the body part you speak about with examples, with details, with the stories. And that is related to develop the topic logically, which is the following question. And finally, in this part of coherence, we have some linking words or discourse makers that show that our speaking has a structure. So things like however, nevertheless, although, well, the connectors that you already know, in the end, etc.
Lovely. So pronunciation. Don't panic about accent. Okay, accent is the least important thing about developing a language. It's very impressive when you meet someone and they've got a perfect accent. Wow, a lot of work has gone into that. Yeah, but this exam isn't about accent, but pronunciation is incredibly important.
Yeah, you can get a band 9 in your speaking without having a British or American accent. You just
not necessary.
Yeah.
They are monitoring your level of spoken English. Accent is right at the bottom of the priority list. Lots of people fixate on needing an American accent, needing a British accent. Don't worry about that. But pronunciation is very, very important. You need to speak clearly. If you're speaking too fast, maybe you're going to mumble or it gets jumbled up. If you're speaking too slow, that's also going to be problematic. So try and balance things.
So did I not the words correctly? Sorry about the typo mistakes. We didn't have time to correct much this presentation. So I pronounced the words correctly. Is my speech clear? So yeah, more than any accent, it's just if you are clear, if people can understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and intonation, you know, when you ask a question, it's the flow, it's the melody of how you're speaking. If you're speaking in a very monotone, robotic way, it's not going to be as, you're not going to make that connection, are you, with the audience?
Yeah. The idea is that you feel natural.
Yeah,
as well
this is also something super important. Fluency it's much better to be making lots of little mistakes and keep your pace, keep your fluency, keep your rhythm, keep your flow, engage. It's much better to do that than speak really slowly, translate everything in your head, and panic about any mistake, any tiny little mistake. That is going to impact your score terribly. It doesn't matter that you spoke perfectly. If you only managed to deliver half of the information in the time because you were speaking so slowly and you were so worried about making mistakes, you're really not going to tell them much. But if you show that you're confident, you show that, yeah, okay, I'm making some mistakes, doesn't matter. I speak English all the time. I love speaking English. I'm used to speaking English. I'm not afraid of speaking English. This is what I do. Yes, you're making some mistakes, but that's okay. You know, very few people that take this exam will be native or will be C2 or C1 plus, you know, you're going to make some mistakes. But it's when people fixate on the mistakes and that impacts their fluidity that it can be really problematic.
And the ability to communicate, because at the end, when we speak, what we are doing is communicating. So that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
However, we have, of course, two other criteria that are more related to those structures of the English language. One is the lexical resources, which is basically vocabulary, and the other is the grammatical accuracy and the use of advanced grammatical structures. So in the first one, they use a wide range of vocabulary and avoid repetition of words. So if you have like these words that are all these expressions that you always use, like I think all the time, you will need to train yourself to use other expressions. So your vocabulary.
I believe from my perspective, from experience, synonyms. Paraphrasing. This entire exam is about paraphrasing, about synonyms. You will be using them throughout the IELTS exam. So it's, yeah, just like a normal conversation. If you're speaking to someone and they're using the same words again and again and again, it's not going to be a very interesting conversation. So try your best to broaden your lexical range.
Yeah. So the second one is, did I use idiomatic expressions that can be idioms, phrasal verbs, or other expressions? This doesn't mean that if you don't use an idiom or if you don't use phrasal verbs, you're not going to get a high score. This is just like a way how you can improve and try to push up your score.
I mean, this is a bit of a double-edged sword. Because if you get an idiom wrong, if you try and use an idiom and you use it incorrectly, you put it in the wrong place or it just comes out weird, then that's really going to impact your score. That's impact it negatively. You know, just like if I tried to do it in Spanish, you know, you just notice it straight away. That sounds weird. But also, it's very interesting that this is the part of the exam where more informal language can actually be beneficial. Yeah, I'm not talking about street slang, yo, that sort of stuff, not that informal. But if you said, I'm going to go get, or I had to go get, or no, I was going to do that, but okay, gonna, I don't want to see any student writing gonna at any point in this exam. When you're writing, when you're doing your reading and you're writing, never use gonna. But if you said gonna whilst you were speaking fast, with connected speech, etc., that's completely okay. That's great, because that's how real people speak. If you can show the examiner that you've assimilated the language, that you know how to use certain phrases, oh, it was raining cats and dogs, or if you use them in the right way, if you use them like a native speaker does, that really shows a level of integration. So this is the one part of the exam where actually we want you to be slightly less formal. You know, if you're a very formal person and that's how you are, fair enough. But most people are a bit more casual, a little bit more loose. It's still an exam situation, no swearing, no ridiculous slang, but you can relax a little bit and just speak normally.
Well, did I use collocations? So I'm not sure if you know what collocations are, but basically they are like groups of words that always come together. So for example, collocation, verb, preposition, collocation,
Look at, look at me, look at that, look at them.
Yeah.
I was looking at the web page when. Think of, think about.
Depends on, well, but there are lots of different.
And some words have multiple collocations depending on what you're using. But again, this is something that is great if you get it right. If you get it wrong, don't worry about it. You're in the moment. Yeah. Do not let making a tiny mistake with a collocation affect your flow, affect you delivering all of this information. If your mind goes blank, talk around it. To try and explain the thing. You can't find the word, you've given it a second, explain it. You know, you can't let anything affect your flow. It's really important that you maintain that consistent rhythm.
Okay, grammatical range and accuracy. So this is the last criteria, and this is more related to the use of your grammar. So if you want to get a very high level, a very high score in your IELTS, you will need to use during the exam advanced grammar structure. So we are talking about, for example, the passive voice, we are talking about conditionals, we are talking about perfect tenses, maybe questions, but we are also talking about different types of sentences. So simple, complex, compound, complex, compound. This is not the place to explain what does this mean, but you will need to try to incorporate these type of things you're speaking, which is at the end, it sounds very difficult, but it's not. It's actually very, very
things
simple.
like conjunctions. If you're explaining something, use because. Don't just leave it there. Use because and go on it to expand. Subordinating conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions, those sorts of things, ways we formulate more complex sentences. Okay, so that's really important. Again, this is based on levels. If you are a low-level student and you're looking for a low-level grade to help you go and study, then
maybe not low level. We're talking about like the people who take this exam minimum has an intermediate level of English. But if you want an advanced, like band 7 or more, you will need to consider these type of things. And finally, are the structure of my sentences well organized? So happens that Spanish is more flexible with the structure of the sentences, where we put the verbs, the adjectives, the adverbs. So we need to be very, very careful with the structure of our sentences. Right. So now we're gonna pass to some recommendations that you think that we think you should consider while studying for the exam, and of course during the exam.
okay, so before the exam, Study the use of disclosure makers.
Discourse
Makers, connectors and conjunctions. Okay, you need this anyway for the exam. If you're doing IELTS, if you're doing TOEFL, if you're doing any language exam, you need to study this stuff anyway. But it's much easier to use a connector when we write. Okay, people find it much more difficult to. And it's not that difficult. You just need to get yourself into the habit. Yeah, you need to force yourself to get into the habit. I'd be quite interested to know how often you use connectors in Spanish. You know, it'd be quite interesting to know that point, because many people don't use connectors that often when they speak. So this is something you need to train yourself to do. Practice incorporating connectors. Practice incorporating subordinating conjunctions.
Study grammar. So if you want a high level of a high score in the exam, you will need to revise at least things like conditionals, like the passive voice, like I don't know, perfect tenses. Of course, if you are a B1 student, maybe this gets a little bit more complicated, and I would focus more on the grammar of your level, that you can manage it very well. But if you are an advanced student, it's important that you can handle this type of grammar very well.
But it's not just studying the grammar. It's also practicing using that grammar when you speak.
Yeah.
It's because it's great to study the grammar and know the grammar off by heart. That's fantastic. But if you're not practicing using it in a sentence, practicing formulating sentences, you're going to find it very difficult to do it on the spot in the moment.
All right, so this is an idea also to increase your vocabulary, and is the creation of mind maps. And we're talking that this is part of your preparation for the exam. Of course, this is not going to happen in the exam. You are going to prepare for it. So what you can do is use mind maps to organize some pieces of vocabulary that you think that are beneficial, that are maybe a bit complex, that are not part of your basic vocabulary, so you can incorporate it in your speaking. So, for example, in this case, we have an example of a big topic that may appear during the exam, which is fashion.
Tell me about a piece of clothing that you recently bought. Or, what item of clothing could you not live without?
Yeah, so here we have, for example, by topics, so outfits, fabrics, so we have silk, wool, cotton, etc. Maybe a style, retro, bold, casual. Another topic, fast fashion, maybe. Sweatshops, mass production, underpayment, but we also can like have some verbs or phrasal verbs, no? For example, to try on, to dress up, or just design, to wear. Adjectives like colorful, trendy, minimalist, and idioms like fashion victim, dress to kill, or a fashion plate. Like those are things that you can do. Maybe when the question appears, you don't really it's not going to be about these specific topics that you have studied for, but you already will have acquired lots of new vocabulary that definitely you will be using.
Yeah, I mean, you want to build your vocabulary anyway. This is something that you can't plan this in the exam. You've got a minute. This is before the exam. This is you working on building your vocabulary. Now, maybe you're the type of person that loves mind maps, and that works for you. Everybody's an individual. You need to experiment with your own way of working out what works best for you. Maybe you prefer writing in a notebook, parrot fashion, recording audio. I don't know. But this is something that you can experiment with, but it's really important to build your vocab and work on these topics in general. So here we've got your own personal go-to list. Well, what do I mean by that, your go-to list? Okay, so when we do these questions, when we're practicing with students, we will often, you know, they answer the question. Okay, that was good. You did well here. I really like this bit, but, you know, that wasn't so great here. We might have, you know, oh, that was quite a good response. And then occasionally with the same student, they'll answer a question and we'll be like, whoa, that was really good. Like, you did really, really well on that topic. You should definitely talk about that topic again. That is something, like, their eyes light up. It's something that they feel comfortable talking about. They have lots of vocabulary. They enjoy talking about it. So you should try and create your own go-to list. Yeah. So here, for instance, people. Okay. Somebody you trust, somebody who gave you good advice, a person that you admire, your best friend. The best meal you ever had. Oh, well, I'm linking it to my mum. My mum cooked it, so I'm going to be talking about my mum a lot. Even though I'm talking about a meal, I'm bringing it to something that's very close to me, my mum. So I know that I can talk about either Lorena or my mum easily, effortlessly. We've shared so many experiences. And it's a safe, comfortable topic for me to talk about. Places. Okay, well, Cartagena. Now, this is another thing about the exam. You have creative license. They do not have a lie detector. You are not wired up to a lie detector and they're checking if you're telling the truth. Okay, imagine you're an actor. Yeah, and this is a casting. And you're just answering the question at a casting. Yeah, you're allowed creative license. So I have been to Cartagena. But if I know that Cartagena is on my go-to list for locations, it's a location I love talking about, I'm comfortable talking about it, and the question is somewhere you would like to go, okay, so somewhere I've never been before, well, the examiner doesn't know if I've been to Cartagena or not, and Cartagena is a place I can definitely talk about, so I'm just going to tell them I would love to go to Cartagena. I've never been. Yeah, and then I'm going to describe why, because of the wall surrounding the city, the beautiful Spanish colonial architecture, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so you have creative license to elaborate, okay?
But having said that, you can prepare some responses, but at the end, you don't know what the question is going to be, and it can be a question that you have never prepared for. That's why the more you do it, the better. Because the more you do it, the more answers you have prepared, you have done. But at the end, you will never know. But yes. Yeah, that's a good thing. If they are asking you to talk about people, well, talk about someone you know. If it's a celebrity, maybe you can have like someone here like Shakira.
Well, Lorena is a celebrity. But Lorena is a Shakira super fan, so she's very comfortable talking about Shakira. But also, sorry, just quickly, sometimes you can combine both. Okay, so worst holiday ever, Cartagena with Lorena. Yeah, so now not only am I talking about a place that I'm comfortable talking about, I'm also going to incorporate another element I'm comfortable talking about, Lorena. Okay, so then I can expand in that way as well.
Before the exam, record yourself. I know it's uncomfortable to listen to our own voice, especially when we're speaking a second language, not even if it's difficult with our native language, it's really complicated to hear our own voice in speaking in English. But that's something that you will need to do in order to study for this exam, to do a self-evaluation of yourself. And even if you have a teacher, us or somebody else, it's good that in your own study plan, you can record yourself, listen to yourself, evaluate, and do it as many times as you can.
I wouldn't even say it's good to do. I would say it's absolutely necessary. You need to self-evaluate. Just set the timer on your phone. Set the timer, give yourself 1 minute to prepare, start preparing. Then go, 2 minutes to talk. You're recording yourself. You finish, you listen to it back. Okay, so what did I like? What didn't I like? What are my opportunities? I said I was going to use 3 connectors. I only used 1. I didn't use a conditional, and this is a question where a conditional would work really easily, and that would be a good way to elevate my response. What was my timing like? Well, the first descriptive part, I think I did really well, but maybe I went too much. I described too much, and I didn't leave enough time for my story. So each time, do the same question again. You've done it, you've listened back, you've made your notes, do it again. Yeah, maybe you don't need the prep time. The second time, you're just going to do it, try it again, record it, listen back. Okay, this time I did use my connectors, great, but the timing's still wrong. Do it again. Do it again. It's about learning. It's about forcing yourself to learn the correct timings, the methodology, the pace. All of these things are going to be beneficial when you're in the exam, because you're going to be much more comfortable with it. And you know the mistakes that you make. So you'll be able to look out for those mistakes and correct them more easily.
And finally, if you guys are serious with your study plan, you should practice every day. You should do a flashcard every day. It will take you 10 minutes maximum. Of course, like doing it. If you want to study it and use the checklist, well, maybe it will take you a little bit more. But in order to improve your fluency, improve your speaking, you need to start doing this every single day.
Record yourself. I know it's horrible. Record yourself, listen to it back, self-correct.
So, approaches. When we are in the institution where we're going to do the exam, we need to go with a plan, with a strategy. So there are different approaches that we can use, and you need to see which type of approach you feel better. So we have some ideas.
This is really about 2 main approaches. For me, there's a plan B. If the student has a lower level, then perhaps this is their plan A, and that's completely okay. You know, if you're going for a 5, if you're going for something around that score, then it's completely okay to approach it however you want. Okay, but what we want to try and avoid. Sorry, can you go across? Is something very formulaic and robotic and very basic. Okay, so this should be an advanced student's plan B. If you see the question, you freak out, your mind's gone blank, you're having a terrible preparation time. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? This is your plan B. Okay, just directly answer the question. A book that you've read, a book that I have read recently was Tan Tan Tan. When did you read it? I read it Tan Tan Tan. What it was about this. Okay, very low level response. They are literally just directly answering the question, taking the question, flipping it. It's okay. If you have to do that, if you're panicking, if you've got no other option, do that. You have to speak. It's imperative that you speak during the speaking section, during this flashcard section, even if you don't understand what's on the card, even if you're having the worst mind blank ever, you have to approach this and you have to get over it, okay? You have to do your best. However, for a higher level student, for a better response, just introduce the topic. Dissect it, and when you're planning, think about what the topic is. Okay, so here, describe a book you've read. So what's the topic? It's literature, reading. So what's my relationship with reading? Well, I actually don't read enough. I know I should read more. Everybody keeps telling me I should read more, and I know it. You know, I even made a New Year's resolution this year that I should start reading more. I can't even remember when the last book I read was, but one that I loved was Moby Dick. That was a fantastic book. So I've already introduced Moby Dick without actually directly talking about
Directly say,
yeah,
my favorite book or a book
is
that I
Moby
read
Dick,
is Moby Dick.
you know. So sorry, can we just go back? Do you want to read that example?
Okay, so for example, so this example of the book, I'm a total bookworm. I love reading. In fact, during the pandemic, I set myself a challenge to read one book a week. By the end of the first big lockdown, I had read 15 books, and the one that resonated most with me was To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. It's about the harsh reality of life for a young girl called Scout growing up in racially divided Alabama, and so on.
As you're talking, as you're going through this, you will organically touch on most of these other points. You're just telling your story, you're expanding, you're in conversation. So if you need to do it 1 point by 1 point by 1 point, that's okay, but you're going to get a low score. If you indirectly answer the question, if you just have a conversation, even if you miss some of these points, it doesn't really matter. You're answering the main question and you're having a natural, organic conversation.
Mm-hmm. All right, so during the exam, first thing, and we already talked about this, is read the question carefully. You need to understand the question. And part of understanding the question is analyzing the tenses of the card. So for example, describe a trip that didn't go as planned. They're talking about the past. So that means that you will need to speak about a story, something in the past. We always recommend using stories, but in a question like this is imperative. You need to do it. Describe a person who you admire. This is a question about the present. You admire that person now. Describe a business that you would like to start. So here, if you describe a business that you started in the past or a business that you admire, you're not answering the question. This is an hypothetical question. You will need to use the conditionals. You will need to use the future. Same thing with the other. Describe a course that you would like to start. So this is like the first thing, analyze very well. And then
prepare your answer whilst always keeping the main question in mind. Keep it simple, keep it close, keep it real. Okay, like I said, you are allowed to lie. There is nothing wrong with changing a story. So like Laurie's example of the business you'd like to start. Well, we started our own business, but hey, I'm going to say I would like to start my own online language school. The examiner doesn't know I have that business. It's, you know, it doesn't matter. You know, I'm changing my reality to make the question work better, and that's completely fine. And it's still real. It's still an English business. It's connected to the truth. If you go and create a big web, a very complex web of, it's not really a lie, that it's more with creative license, you create this big web. It's very easy to sound disingenuous or insincere or fake. So it's always good to keep something close to reality, as close to reality.
That's because even if you feel fake, or if the examiner think that you feel fake, that doesn't really matter, because what it's important is your English. The problem is that when you lie, it's not gonna be easy to make up everything in your mind. So you will be doing two processes, trying to speak, but at the same time trying to make up a story. So that's like,
keep it close. But the most important thing, keep it simple. You can get a very advanced score by using advanced grammar structures, advanced vocabulary, but still talking about a simple topic. Some students see the flashcard and go, I'm going to talk about nuclear fusion. Okay, unless you're a nuclear physicist, don't talk about nuclear fusion. It's a very complex topic. I doubt anybody has sufficient vocabulary to talk about a topic that complex. Keep it close to you. We can get great scores and have complex conversations talking about simple things.
So during the preparation time, that minute that you will have, there are different ways how you can approach this. Some of the ways is like, for example, writing keywords per question, which we don't exactly recommend because at the end, yeah, you should focus on the main part. The other is think about a story. I think this is very important. Like stories are our
Crucial.
friends in these situations. Think about examples which actually can be related to stories. Maybe if you have difficulties with thinking of connectors or conjunctions, maybe write a couple of connectors that you will be able to use during the speech part.
It might be the difference. Having written a couple of connectors down, that might be the difference when you're speaking. You look down at your notes, connectors. And that might be the trigger that helps you to remember to use those connectors.
And something that always helps me personally to close an idea is talking about an aspiration in the future. So you also can think about that. You don't need to write all of these during these minutes, but we have these images just for you to have them in mind when you are speaking. If you lack if you lack ideas, maybe just thinking about these images that you're seeing there will say, okay, the future, I'm going to talk about this aspiration. So you don't need to really like write future and write a keyword related to future. It's more for you to get inspired. To have
hopefully you've practiced doing this and you've worked out, maybe you're a mind map person, maybe that works best for you. Or perhaps you like this template best. But the idea is that you've practiced this so much, all you need to do is do a line across the bottom and a line down. One is story, one is future, and you've got a minute. You can't write sentences, you can't write, all of this stuff. By the time you've written key question, like these time's up. So you'll need to memorize this, practice so many times. You create your own one. This isn't necessarily right for you. Maybe there's a different structure. I'm going the wrong way. Apologies. Perhaps there's a different structure that works best for you. There is no right or wrong, but this is something you need to practice and perfect, basically, because you've got 1 minute and that can make all the difference.
And finally, and this is something that helped many people, and is to have the first sentence ready in your mind before you start speaking. So that means that when the examiner says you can start speaking now, you already have the idea of how you're going to start. So your level of fluency will be here, and you just will need to maintain it. You will feel more confident, and you will be able to maintain that pace. If you start like here, hesitating, like, well, the book that I read last was, I'm hesitating, and in order to increase my fluency, I will need to pass some time, and therefore it's going to be harder.
Or you've just lost 5 seconds. You've just lost 5 seconds that could be really useful later on. So maybe that's a few pauses, your mind going blank or whatever. So if you can go in with momentum, go in running. I love reading. I'm a total bookworm. You go in hot, fantastic.
All right. So during the speaking part, try to have a structure. Try to have an introduction that really introduces the topic, and then you answer the question, giving the description of this general idea, give details, examples, tell stories. If you still have time to speak, you can talk about aspirations for the future. So it's important to have a structure, but I know that many teachers and many institutions encourage people to use templates, to memorize blocks of sentences. So for low-level students, that may work, and that can give you a pass in the exam. If you want a higher score, we highly recommend not to do that.
Well, it's a weird one. Also with low levels, like The only way it can really work is if you're an exceptionally high level student, because if you've, quite often we see it, a student says like a couple of sentences perfectly that are really advanced and that they say them really, really well. And then they start speaking at their real level. And there's a disparity. There's a big drop between what they've memorized and practice and practice and practice and their actual level. And that stands out to a native speaker, to an instructor. We see that straight away. And oh no, template. They've just been studied. They've just practiced that. So that will get you a bad score. So the only real way you could use something like that is if you have an exceptional level. So there's no difference. You know, when you start speaking normally, it's of the same level. So we advise not doing that.
Yeah. And finally, we want to share an example with you of a flashcard that we consider is a high level response. In this case, the flashcard is about a piece of clothing that you receive as a gift. So they will put, you should say what it was, when you receive it, who gave it to you, and explain if this gift was important to you. So do you want to read it?
Do you want me to read it? Okay, so I'm just going to read this like I'm Lorena. Okay, so I'm a real fashionista. I love to stay on top of the latest trends, but I'm also really picky. So I prefer to buy my own clothes because if someone gives me something, it's likely to end up in the back of my closet or be regifted. The only person who's brave enough to try is my husband, Tom, but even then it's 50-50. Sometimes he gets it just right though. Last year, he bought me a pair of 3/4 length trousers that were to die for.
So in this case, this is an introduction. I'm not starting with what was the question?
A piece of clothing.
The piece of clothing that that someone gave me. Like I didn't start. Well, last year, Tom, my husband, gave me a pair of trousers. No.
What's the topic? The topic is
an
fashion.
Introduction.
The topic's fashion. What's my connection to fashion? I love fashion. I don't care about fashion. It doesn't interest me. I hate spending money on expensive clothes. You know, you can approach this in any way, but try and think of the topic, relate that topic to you, yourself, to something real, and then introduce it. And you'll probably indirectly answer the question anyway.
What else do we have here? We have expressions like idiomatic expressions like fashionista. We have conjunctions. We have another expression stay on top. It's 50-50. Yeah. It's not that you need to do this during the exam. You have to know.
No, this is very unfair. I mean, I wrote this, so you know, I'm not expecting all of you guys to do this kind of response, but it's more to show you the structure, how you can approach this. I didn't even look at the other points. All I focused on was the main question: a piece of clothing, given, and fashion.
We have here, for example, a conditional. Yeah, so that's also advanced vocabulary that we're giving. Do you want to continue? Okay.
It was just after the last big lockdown had ended and we had to go for a medical checkup. The clinic was really delayed. So to kill some time, we went to a Toro Kaje, a well-known Colombian brand. My friend had told me that they just introduced a new women's section. So obviously I had to go check it out.
So here we are starting the story that, as we said, and we repeat to every single student, the stories are going to make you speak for the 2 minutes. If you don't tell a story, it's going to be very hard that you can speak for that long.
Stories are your friend. They're how you add color, how you expand. Sometimes it is, talk about an object, and you will have to spend some time describing the object, but quite often, like here, I go into a description later and it's part of my story. So you can mix it up. You are completely free to approach this however you want.
Yeah, and the stories are not only for questions that are related to the past. You can tell stories with questions related to the future. You can tell stories with questions related to hypothetical situations or with things in the present. Okay, continue.
Okay. I don't know who they hired to design the collection, but it was really on point and completely me. A pair of silk trousers instantly caught my eye. They were super chic, with delicate, oversized, straight-cut legs that came halfway up the lower leg. They're mainly black, but with big prints of leaves and brush strokes in white, green, red, and gold. I especially love the way they move when I walk, and they look killer in heels. However, as they were quite expensive and a bit too baggy around the waist, I decided to leave them. But much to my surprise, my husband had noticed, and he secretly bought them for my birthday.
So here we're giving more details about that piece of garment, which is at the end the focus, no? Describe a piece of describe a piece of clothes that somebody gave you. So here we have the description of that, but it's in the middle of our speech. It's not a straight away.
And you can play with that, you know, just whatever works. But yes, description is part of the question, so you do need to describe. You could have done the description at the start and then told the story, but in this case, I prefer this where it's incorporated into the story. Okay. When I opened my present, I was over the moon. I couldn't believe my eyes. He'd even had them adjusted to my size. They're definitely my favorite pair. Not only because of how cool they look, but also because it was so romantic. I'm going to wear them to a wedding next week with a lovely blouse that I picked up from the same place. I can't wait. I know they're going to look fab together.
So here we're using the strategy of the aspiration, no? Like talking about a future aspiration, which is the wedding and how I'm going to look next week in the future. This is an example of a very high level response.
Yeah,
so
this is cheating.
Yeah.
This is completely cheating. I wrote this.
Yeah.
And it took me a lot longer than 2 minutes to write. So, but this is just a way that you could approach this. That would be a high level response.
So I think we have covered almost everything. Maybe even the final tips. I think we have talked about that. The level of formality. So it is an academic exam, but the speaking part can be more informal. It's an interview with another person. You're not going to need to use big words that are academic.
Imagine you're having a chat with a good friend.
Yeah, you need to sound natural. It's often better to make more small mistakes. We talked about that already. They speak for the whole 2 minutes. So this is important because you don't see a timer. You won't know how long you have been talking. So sometimes it's even better if you have practiced this many times, you already know when the minute and a half or the minute and 40 seconds is going to be. But if you haven't, it's better that you keep speaking until they stop you. If you don't start a word of the flashcard, this can happen. I said it already, but the worst thing you can do is panic. So try to just make sense of the question, decide what you're going to talk. Maybe it's not 100% accurate to what they are asking, but that's better than nothing. The worst thing is not big.
Yeah, like the neighborhood example I gave earlier. Our student heard neighborhood, she spoke about neighborhood. And she spoke for the entire 2 minutes.
And she still got the 6.5.
She still got 6.5. She just didn't get the 7.5 or the 8 that she wanted. Okay. But she still got the score she needed to pass.
Okay, so this is important. And I wouldn't say it's only important for the speaking, but in general, for everything, is that we focus a lot on hacking the exam. And it's super important to know the exam, to know the best strategies, to do it again and again. But also sometimes we have one level of English and our expectation is high and we don't have much time. So I would say focus on increasing your speaking level if you need a high level. because otherwise it's going to be very hard, even if you know the exam completely, to get the level you want.
I don't know what you guys are going to do. There's a big group of people we're chatting to right now. I imagine the majority of you are going in an academic path on an academic course. You're going to take the academic IELTS. I would say it's less problematic for somebody taking the general training to emigrate. But if you're going to study a master's in English, this exam is to prepare you for that experience. You know, if you hack the exam and you manage to scrape, you just got your 6.5 and you get to go to your uni and to study, you're going to have a very difficult time. It's going to be incredibly challenging and you're going to have a lot of catching up to do. You know, you're already going to be studying with native speakers. You're going to be studying with a myriad of different people. And you might be brilliant at the topic, but if your English isn't good enough, you're going to struggle. So if you hack the exam, it's not necessarily the best thing. You need to elevate your English, work on your all-round English, so that you're prepared, you're actually ready for taking your masters.
Yeah, if your mind goes blank and you can't remember a word, that happens. We're humans, we get nervous. So if this happen, try to breathe first and try to explain the situation. If you definitely have your mind in blank, just go to a next point, see your notes. That's why you have the notes. So see your notes and start again a new point.
For instance, the word picture. I'm looking for the word picture. My mind's gone blank. I've given it a second. I can't think of the word picture. So it's a piece of art that you hang on your wall, and it's usually in a wooden frame. You know, explain what the thing is, move on. Yeah. Or if you're really stuck, just stop and start a sentence again, a new sentence without the word that you couldn't get. That's better than losing 2 seconds, 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds. Oh my God, what am I going to do? So in some cases, it's just better to say, sorry, and just start the sentence again and just go straight in again and move on.
Yeah, and finally, relax. I mean, is that an examiner is not going to evaluate your efforts, is not going to evaluate yourself. It's just an exam. So you need to like relax and do your best.
And one of the ways that can really help with being relaxed in that space is practice. Practice, 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 practice. Record yourself, listen to yourself back, make your corrections. If you've got any native speaking friends, work with them. If you can join any clubs, if you can find any spaces, if there's some communities like Gringo Tuesday or something like that, get out there, speak English, practice, engage as much as you can. I know it's not easy. I know there's not that many spaces, but it is possible. But yeah, you can definitely practice infinite amounts of flashcards on your own, at home, in a safe space. You know, you can do it with the doors shut and when nobody's at home, so you're not listening to people, listening to you, listening to yourself. And yeah, there's ways we can make it less cringe, less sort of awkward, but it's really necessary. Self-correction is how you're going to monitor your improvement, identify your areas of opportunity, and make those changes.
Guys, in case you need of any assistance with your exam, we are here for you. As I said at the beginning, we offer personalized sessions. We have had students who have had 4 hours with us. We have made our best to help, and in those 4 hours, maybe it's just specific skills. But of course, if you want a serious training process, you will need a little bit more.
We work around our students' needs and realities. That example is true. We had a student, she worked with us for 4 hours. one on speaking, one on listening, one on reading, one on writing. But she was an incredibly dedicated, highly motivated professional who was spending a massive amount of time on her own, self-studying, studying all the books.
Yeah, and to first she was an English teacher, so.
But yeah, and it works. So we'll work around whatever your reality is. But if not, there's zero pressure. Like, we'd love to work with you or not. That's completely okay. But whatever happens, please follow us on socials because we need more followers. So that would be great. At minimum, could you please follow us on socials? We'd love that.
Yeah. All right. Do you have any questions, guys?
Yes. So we're happy to answer questions. We'll stop presenting. I know that was a big chunk of information, so apologies in that respect.
Long.
Anyone still here? Have everybody left?
No.
You
still have 12 people.
A couple of people. Okay. Well, look. Does anyone have any questions that they? You can write it in the chat, or you can ask us directly. We're happy to answer any questions.
Tammy, do you have any questions?
No, not really.
Have you taken the IELTS?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Soon.
Not yet.
One day.
Yeah.
No.
Well, yeah. If you do have any questions, now is the time. We're happy to answer them directly. If not, you can always contact us on our WhatsApp or whatever.
Thank you. No questions. Thanks a lot for your tips. Thank you so much. Everything was clear.
We've got a question.
Thanks
Lucia.
a lot, guys. I do have a question. Wow.
Oh, Lucia, please ask your question. You can turn your mic on, or you can use the chat. Don't mind.
So could you please show us again the Instagram? So our Instagram is English with Tom&Lore. Just like that, all together.
But if you put in English, Tom&Lore, or Tom&Lore English, or you'll find us.
Yeah.
Not a massive Facebook fan. Insta's our main platform.
Are they going to take into account what I've studied before?
What does that? What
think
Lucia, what do you mean by that? What do you mean?
I understand what you mean.
Each.
So if the question is if they know, for example, if you have studied architecture or if you are an artist or whatever, no, it's just random. They will give you questions that are random. Probably during the first part of the speaking part, they will assess your level, and according to that, they will give you a flashcard. So for more intermediate or basic level students, they will give a easier flashcard. For more advanced students, they will give you a more advanced card. But no,
and your masters, all of that. I mean, they're not involved in any of that process. They'll have no idea. Maybe at the very start of the speaking section, part 1, there is a very informal conversation. Hi, how you doing? What's your name? Can I see your ID, please? Okay, so what part of the city do you live in? What do you do? You know, if they ask you what do you do and you tell them I'm a student and I'm studying my master's, well, yes, they're going to know what you're doing or what you're going to do.
But that's not going to be considered.
That won't affect your score.
They will assess your level of English, not anything else.
Yeah. And the topics are generally very, very universal, very straightforward. In the exam, in the IELTS exam, when you're in the reading section, you're going to be dealing with academic content. It's very likely, it's highly probable you won't know, you won't be an expert in that subject. I studied biology. Funnily enough, lots of the topics are biology based, so I find it quite easy. But don't worry if you don't know what the topic is. All of the information is within the exam. Yeah, in the reading section, all of that information is there. You don't need specialist vocabulary, etc. But no, what you're studying may well be one of your go-to examples. Yeah. So say you're studying, I don't know,
Art.
yeah, you're studying fine art. Well, if you love fine art, you study fine art, that's your life. That would be on my list of go-to examples, things I want to talk about. Yeah, fine arts. I want to try and somehow bring the question back to fine arts because that's something I'm very good at talking about. But yeah, they've got no idea who you are, other than they need to check your ID, make sure you're really the person that has applied, that should be taking the exam. Other than that, they have no idea about who you are or your history.
All right, guys, if we don't have any questions, I hope, Lucia, that was clear. Okay, great.
Yeah, do you want to add
So, yeah, our WhatsApp.
It's +57, we're in Colombia.
3295. This is our WhatsApp in case you want to contact us.
Exactly.
And I think
+57 for Colombia.
STM will send the video, right, Cami? With
Yeah.
our information as well. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. We're here for a couple more seconds if you've got any other questions. If not, we'll leave you all to enjoy your evenings. Yeah, I hope you found that useful. There was a lot of information to deliver very quickly. But yes, we'd love to work with any of you, but you don't need our help. You can do this on your own. Please record yourself. Listen to yourself back, self-correct, do it again, do it again, do it again until you perfect it. Then the next one, do it again, do it again, do it hundreds of times until you're super comfortable, until it's so formulaic and natural that when you're in that exam space, you're not even going to be phased. Well done. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Lori. Thank you so much for this great session. And thank you for attending this session.
Yeah,
our pleasure. Our pleasure. All right. Good
See
luck,
you.
everyone. Good luck with your exams. Good luck with your processes. I hope it all goes well. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.